Well, first of all, thank you, Alec, for the warm invitation to come out here to speak to you all about criminal justice reform and the First Step Back. And I want to give a special thanks to Lisa Nelson for her tireless work and efforts. Without the partnership we had with Alec and Weldon Angelos, it would have been hard to really move the needle. So it was certainly a team effort with getting criminal justice reform done. And Alec has provided us with a rich forum of reason and open, nonpartisan discussions, and I'm very thankful for rare moments where we can put differences aside and have a debate and discussion about the issues that matters. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the First Step Back, which was President Trump's landmark 2018 bill that marked the first major reform in criminal justice in almost 2 decades. To be honest with you, it's not something that President Trump ran on, just because traditionally Republicans have taken tough on crime kind of vernacular on criminal justice issues. And so when I joined the administration, of course, I'm not a lawyer by background, and I've worked on the Hill for over 10 years. But I went, before working on the Hill for 10 years, I served as a financial advisor in Cleveland, Ohio, and at my local church, I served as a mentor coordinator for a job partnership program. What I didn't realize is that most of the individuals that were looking for opportunities and jobs were individuals who were former offenders and coming home from prison. And I ended up becoming, I was like 23 years old, I ended up becoming a mentor to people who served 30 years, 50, 60 years old, coming back out, in the 21st century and not really knowing how to navigate the job market. And so it was at that point in time, and then my own personal experiences where I got arrested, but I had the ability to afford legal counsel, that I realized that our criminal justice system was really broken. And so when I got the opportunity, right when I left the Hill, to work with an organization called Generation Opportunity, and I got the opportunity to kind of work on criminal justice reform, I kind of jumped right into it. And that was right around the time where I met Weldon. And so this was before the Trump administration and all other things. It was, Weldon's case was probably the first case I really worked on. And so seeing him come home and get justice was really important. But at that time, we were really advocating for the Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act, which was the legislation that was put forward by Durbin and Senator Grassley, but didn't get a chance to really get voted on during the Obama administration. And so when we had the opportunity to work on this in the Trump administration, there was a lot of skepticism around doing that type of reform. And so what we did, with partnership with a guy named Brett Tolman and other individuals, we thought it was best to kind of break the legislation down to the thing that everyone had in common. We know that 90% of the individuals that go to prison are coming home. We also know that America, is 5%, of the world's population, but has like 23% of the prisoners in the world. And so that's crazy. And so instead of just letting the status quo be, we needed to do something to help not only reform our prisons, but create a safer environment through recidivism reduction. Because we thought that if we can curb recidivism rates and people who we knew were going to come home, those 90% that we knew were going to come home, we can curve that, by just a little bit, or 10%, is less individuals being victimized and less people going back to prison. America's recidivism rates are extremely high. I think on average they're like 50%, but you go to some states it's like 70%. The federal system was at like 35%, so it was lower than a lot of our local prison systems, but there still was some work to do. And so the focus really was on recidivism reduction reform. And so we focused on prison reform, reforming our prisons in a way that once a person entered the prison system, he wouldn't come out the same, and creating incentives around the prison system that would get people to participate in recidivism reduction programming based off of their individual criminology. And that was the focus initially around criminal justice reform. And we were able to overwhelmingly get the First Step Act passed out the House as a result of that focus. But once we passed the legislation out the House, we ran up against Senator Durbin and Senator Grassley that really wanted to focus on sentencing reform and add some pieces to the legislation that would deal with mandatory minimums, which we thought was extremely important. So at this point in time, once we had passed the legislation out the House with the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries and Doug Collins, we really needed the president's support in getting conservatives in the Senate to support this legislation. And I think this is really key because, right now, as Weldon mentioned, with the rise in violent crime, we have to be very sensitive to how we do criminal justice reform. And I'm going to be honest with you. There's a right and a wrong way to do criminal justice reform. And we're seeing that play out, especially with the pandemic. Some localities spent time using a blanket approach towards letting people out and giving them second chances. And that's put some localities in a position where violent crime has increased. That's not what we're talking about, and that's certainly not the policy of America First Policy Institute. Our focus is on primarily on reducing crime. And we think that reducing crime, you can do it in a smart way by focusing on those nonviolent individuals so that we can focus our real resources on the violent offender, on those people who seek to do harm in society. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that specifically because in order for us to continue to do the great work, similar to the First Step Act, we have to focus on a measured approach that allows for second chances for nonviolent offenders, and at the same time, putting our resources towards those violent offenders. And at America First Policy Institute, that's going to be a huge focus of our organization because we think that the work of the First Step Act is really just a drop in the bucket. And I mean that only because our federal prison system is only like 180,000 individuals. There's millions of individuals in the state prisons. Millions of individuals in the state prisons. And so our focus over the next couple years is going to be working with state leaders like yourself, taking that measured approach towards criminal justice reform. From our work from the First Step Act, remember I told you earlier that recidivism rates were at 34%. After the First Step Act, recidivism rates are at 11%. That's a huge change, huge change. So I want you all to be very careful when you hear people talk about the First Step Act and the rise of violent crime. The facts tell a whole different story. And the fact is that it didn't take a blanket approach towards criminal justice reform. Very measured approach. And so what I would like to do is continue to help you all think about how we can take a measured approach towards criminal justice reform that's going to focus on fairness, focus on giving people second chances, focus on nonviolent offenders, but most importantly, keep communities safe, because that's the most important thing that we can do as leaders in America. So I'll end here because there's a lot of different things I can talk about. But many states are currently doing reforms. We've seen reforms in Texas, Kentucky, and Ohio, taking that measured approach like the First Step Act, focusing on rehabilitation, sentencing reform, and recidivism reduction. But I'm proud that we're all together going to work to make people more aware on what's the right way to do reform versus the wrong way. And I can't wait to see what the future holds, especially with leadership like individuals like Lisa Nelson and Weldon Angelos, individuals like Right on Crime, Brooke Rollins. This is an issue that really conservatives can lean in on. Because if we don't take this bull, by the horns and lead the way, I worry about criminal justice reform. So it's on us to take that leadership. We're here to help. We're here to kind of partner with ALEC, and God knows that we're doing the work of the people. Because look at these stories. Look at Weldon. Look at Alice Marie Johnson. Look at Duke Tanner. I mean, these are individuals that came out of the prisons and are making a positive change, not only to their families but to their communities. And that's really what it's all about. Helping our country, create these ecosystems of opportunity for everyone. I'm very thankful for ALEC inviting me up today, and I look forward to what we have ahead. Thanks so much.